Good morning, and welcome to the Egotistical podcast. I say good morning because it is early. Well, for some of you it's early. It's 5 a.m. on a Saturday. For me, this is late. I usually get up at about 10 to 4 for work and to do all my little things. So this is actually sleeping in a bit for me. Today's podcast is brought to you by the number pi and a polite Q. So, what shall we talk about today? I think today is going to be the aforementioned political rant. Let's just get it out of the way, and then, unless something earth-shattering happens, we can leave politics behind for more fun and interesting topics. Like I said in my last episode, life is too short. But I don't really want to rant. I don't want to just preach to my own choir, if such a thing even exists. I don't want to own anyone, because I do firmly believe that everyone has the right to vote however they want, and to support whomever they want. But it's just undeniable that right now, our country is spiraling downward into hate, anger, poverty, sickness, mentally, physically, and emotionally. The list goes on and on. We are becoming so regressive as Donald Trump further and further erodes our constitutional rights and whittles away at the balance of power that was meant to keep the president from becoming a dictator. I want my children to have the right to free speech. I want them to be healthy. It's all become so depressing and frustrating, and it's hard to say all this in a calm and rational manner. I don't want to be Sean Hannity. I don't want to be, what's his name? You never hear from him anymore. Bill O'Reilly. I don't want to be any of those people who just spew the same ideological garbage over and over again. And it's not just the right. This is where the whole culture wars comes into play, where the far left wants to hijack everything that came before that has a huge existing following and then take it over and bang its fans over the head with an ideological hammer. There's no influence, there's no desire to change hearts and minds, there's no desire to learn, listen, or understand. There's just vitriol and snarkily preaching to their own choir. But I understand the allure, because I am angry, yes, to the point of snarkiness. I'm angry that Trump is undermining our constitutional freedoms. I'm angry that Trump is ravaging the economy for us little people, while he and his friends make out like bandits at our expense. I'm angry that his Secretary of Health, RFK Jr., spews dangerous junk science that promotes death and disease. I'm angry that his cabinet lies and lies before the American people on a continual basis. I'm angry that citizens and legal immigrants are being pulled off the streets into vans by people without shields, without uniforms, and if you stand up to them, then you're arrested for stopping the police from doing their business, and they're not even the police. Police officers wear shields and uniforms and have to identify themselves. They are accountable. That's what's so wrong about this. Trump's masked, ununiformed Gestapo is deliberately unaccountable in the way law enforcement always has been in our country. Why? Why are we allowing this? So I don't want to just focus on a certain ideology, even though that's the only way you can get an audience these days. The animated show The Boondocks once did a hysterical bit on Ann Coulter. The episode was called The S Word, where they showed her to be a completely different person off camera. And when Huey asks her why she says such hateful things if she doesn't believe in them, she scoffs and replies something like, "Saving the world doesn't sell books, bitch." Well, I've written a handful of books that no one reads anyway, so why should I start worrying about it now? Trying to shame people into voting for your side never works anyway. Let's be honest here. Part of the reason we're in the mess we are today is because for the last 30 years or so, the Democrats' MO has been a shaming campaign in the media against Republicans, which was brought up to a ridiculous boil by Hillary Clinton in 2016, trying to get her supporters to shame any of their friends and family who didn't support her. And just pointing this out was worthy of shaming and ostracizing. Yeah, Donald Trump didn't win his first time around. Hillary Clinton lost. She was so insanely divisive that even her own party did not want to come out and support her. In her supporters' eyes, just saying that you thought Bernie Sanders was a better choice meant that you really wanted to see Trump win, and you personally wanted to grab all women by the kitty cat. And I can hear some of you crying, wait, I thought this was going to be all about the evils of Donald Trump. Well, yes and no. It's about the evils of us versus them ideology that we're facing today. Yes, Trump is president and not Hillary. And I can't stand people who reply, but Biden, but Hillary, but Obama, every time Trump does something horrible, immoral, or fascist. But at the same time, we do have to be honest about how we got here. Okay then, having said that, let's get back on track. The point is that shaming doesn't work. It's non-productive. And even if Trump makes my colon clench, the truth is, there are many good, decent, and loving people who voted for him. Just like there are many good, decent, and loving people who voted against him. There are other Republicans who, just like some Hillary supporters, instantly respond to any criticism of their orange god with rancor, insults, and vilification. This all comes down to, and I hate to sound smug and superior, no, actually I love sounding smug and superior, but it's the only thing that explains it. It all comes to ideals versus ideology, no matter which side you're on. Okay, let's break it down. Let's talk about ideals versus ideology. As I said in my last podcast and a gazillion times on my blog, ideology is the grouping of ideals, beliefs, and values into us versus them camps, often illogically and hypocritically betraying the ideals the ideology is based upon. The best example I always use, and I'm sorry if this is triggering for anyone because I know it's a sensitive subject, is abortion versus environmentalism. Now, there are people in the world who deeply abhor abortion. They see it as the murder of the innocent, and they feel that it must be stopped at all costs. This is an ideal. Another, completely different ideal that some people have is that we should not be poisoning the air we breathe, the water we drink, and the food we eat, and that we should not be making our own climate uninhabitable. Now, by some weird twist of fate, the camp that supports a woman's right to choose to have an abortion also tends to embrace environmental issues. Therefore, because anything of the enemy must be evil, this in turn causes those who are vehemently against abortion on moral grounds to perform all kinds of mental gymnastics as to why poisoning the environment they and their children need to live in is actually a good thing, and will snarkily attack anyone who points out that the temperatures have drastically risen in recent years and all the bizarre changes to the weather this has caused. Not to mention the poisoning of our food and our sky and the air we breathe, etc., 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 that I mentioned before. This, my friends, is ideology in action. Two completely unrelated ideals butting heads because our society has taken us versus them camps to an idiotic level. It's the same reason such people embrace RFK Jr.'s voodoo and bloodletting over actual proven medical science at the cost of their and their own children's health and lives. And that's the reason we're stuck in this place that we're in right now. Almost half the country simply isn't liberal or progressive or Democrat, whatever you want to call it. And I'm not saying they should be. It's just a fact. And they're never going to vote Democrat no matter who is running, and they're never going to not support Republicans no matter who is running. And the same is true for the other half of the nation. Almost half of them would never ever vote for a Republican no matter who it was. So shaming the people on the opposite team just doesn't work. So why is it so encouraged? Why is it forced down our throat by the media every single day by both sides? Because the powers that be know that as long as we keep our pitchforks aimed at each other, we're not going to aim them at them. And that way, they can just screw us and screw us. It's that simple. No, I'm not saying that both sides are the same. They're just two sides of the same coin. Like a good cop and bad cop interrogation, where the intended result is always the same, no matter who pretends to be your friend. Oh, I'm on your side. I'm there for you. You gotta watch out for that guy. We have to stop that guy. But I'm on your side. But at the same time, the far left are not the ones right now who are trying to erode your constitutional rights. At least not in this country. The far-left anti-freedom of speech crap going on in Spain and the UK right now is insane, but let's just stick with our nation. It's the right that is going whole hog on eroding your constitutional rights and selling out your economy, and they're being cheered and applauded every step of the way because somebody's side won. This, by far, is the most pointless, ridiculous argument I've ever heard defending Trump. Well, we won. This is what the people wanted. The Nazis, Putin, Mussolini, a whole bunch of other dictators won by election as well. That's not proof of anything. And if that's too much hyperbole for you, then tell me all the ways you supported Biden and Obama because they won. But of course you didn't. You shouldn't have been expected to. Let's be honest. If Obama, Biden, Bill Clinton, or any other Democrat was stretching presidential powers versus the Constitution to its breaking point, unilaterally sending the National Guard to occupy Republican states on the flimsiest of pretexts, if any Democrat ever said, a la Trump, I have the right to do anything I want to do. I'm the President of the United States. Those are his literal words. Okay? If any Democrat ever said that, all these we won and nothing else matters people would be shitting themselves in rage. In the very hypocritical words of Kristi Noem, Trump's Secretary of Homeland Security, posting on X back in February 2024, if Joe Biden federalizes the National Guard, that would be a direct attack on states' rights. Over the last several years, we've seen Democrats try to take away our freedoms of religion, assembly, and speech. We can't let them take away our right to defend ourselves, too. South Dakota defends the Constitution. Defends the Constitution, but it's okay for her and Trump to just shit all over the Constitution, right? Because that's what they're doing by sending the National Guard here, there, and everywhere. Well, here, there, and everywhere that disagrees with Trump. So, if winning is all that matters, shouldn't she have gotten behind Biden 100%? Because he was the people's choice. The hypocrisy is so revolting and thick, you can chew it up like bubblegum. Okay, so I am verging into shaming here, which is what I didn't want to do. I don't want to do. So I tell you what, I'm going to be completely egotistical here, just like the podcast and the website says. That's why it's egotisticalproductions.com. I'm going to make this all about me. I'm going to explain why, as someone who has leaned pretty much right of center all of his life. I do have some left-leaning ideals, but if you want to put all my beliefs on a linear scattergraph, the majority of them would admittedly be what certain qualifiers would describe as right of center. I'm going to explain why, as someone who has had many Republican sympathies all his life, Donald Trump has betrayed just about every ideal and belief I was raised to believe in. Just about everything the Republican Party is supposed to stand for. So, before you get offended, keep in mind this isn't about you. This is all about me. Because this is my podcast. Yeah. I also want to say that I have fact-checked the facts as much as possible, but there are some speculations and there are some very tinfoil conspiracy theories ahead, and I do define them as such. But such speculations and such conspiracy theories, they're all mine. I'll loan them to you if you want. You can borrow them, just tell people you got them right here. Let them embrace the egotisticalness for them. Egotisticality? Egotisticality. Let them embrace the egotisticality for themselves. So, in no particular order, these are the ways Donald Trump has betrayed the Republican and conservative values I was raised to believe in. This is why I am so angry. Number 1, he treats the police like garbage, like filth, like they're worthless. He and his cronies talk all kinds of crap about law and order, about how dare anyone stand up to their masked, ununiformed, unshielded Gestapo, and he uses the excuse of law and order, as I said, to stretch the limits of the Constitution to supposedly bolster the police with the military. But never, ever forget, on January 6th, 2021, Donald Trump orchestrated a riot that stormed the Capitol building in his name. These worthless traitors, whom Donald Trump has pardoned, 1,500 of them, were caught on video screaming to kill police officers. They have been caught on video screaming that the cops were traitors and Nazis. They were screaming to kill the police, to shoot them with their own guns, all in Donald Trump's name. And this miserable, disgusting worm of a human being, I'm sorry, that's not fair to worms, okay? This piece of human filth has the gall to preach that he's on the side of law and order? Remember, he used his presidential authority to nationalize the National Guard in Washington, D.C. earlier this month, even though his own government statistics say that violent crime was at its lowest point in over 30 years. So then, why didn't he do it on January 6th? Why did the lying coward blame Nancy Pelosi when he's established over and over that as president, where D.C. is concerned, he has the authority? Because the hateful riot he orchestrated against police, the one that caused 4 brothers in blue to commit suicide, was in his name. So that's my number 1. Personally, as someone who was raised to support the police, someone with family members he loves and respects who are retired police officers and has friends who are currently in the police, I can't speak for anyone else, but I will never forget or forgive Trump's actions against them on January 6th, 2021. I will never forget that he orchestrated a mob that screamed for the death of police officers in his name. I will never forget that he caused 4 cops to commit suicide. I will never forget that he's pardoned 1,500 of these traitors. I can't speak for anyone else, but I spit on him for the way he's treated the police. Now, before we get to number 2, I'm going to digress here. This is purely my own conspiracy theory. Color me tinfoil because I have no proof. But to me, logically, the reason he's stretching his presidential powers to place the military in highly Democrat-leaning cities is because there is something very, very bad that's in the works. Something that's going to cause mass protests, and he wants to neutralize any demonstrations before they start. Like I said, this is purely my own conspiracy theory. But if anyone can tell me a better reason when he lies over and over about crime statistics and stretches the Constitution to its limits to fill our cities with the military against their governors' and citizens' wishes, states' rights be damned, I'd love to hear it. And aren't Republicans supposed to be for state sovereignty? Wasn't that always one of their biggest talking points? Whatever happened to that? Okay, moving on. Let's go to number 2, the economy, aka taxation without representation. Now, this one's a little difficult because, of course, taxes are important. Without taxes, we wouldn't have schools, roads, etc. But Republicans are supposed to be against excessive and stealth taxes, right? Yet here comes Trump, and he basically levies a nationwide sales tax on top of existing state sales taxes by way of his tariffs. Now, from everything I've seen on Fox News and social media, some people just do not understand how tariffs work. So I'm going to spell it out for you. Tariffs are supposed to be a deterrent from buying foreign goods. They're supposed to be an incentive for Americans to buy American and for American manufacturers to buy from American suppliers. Now, this might actually work if we had the industry in place beforehand, but here is the critical point: we don't. Look at it this way. Pretend you have a job. You're the head of your household. You provide for your family. Now, one day, you decide you want a better job. One with higher pay, more benefits, more prestige, etc. How do you go about it? Do you walk into your boss's office, take a crap on his desk, and say, "See ya, bitches," and then think you're going to just find a better job even though you have no education, training, or a plan? No, of course you don't, because you are sane. You make sure you have a better job lined up first, and then you leave in a way that doesn't burn your bridges and cause animosity. This is called being a responsible adult. This is called having common sense. You don't just quit your job, because while you don't have a job, you're not going to get anything. You're not going to get unemployment. You're not going to get any help. You still have bills to pay and a family to feed and clothe and house, so you're not going to do anything so stupid, right? Well, this is the equivalent of what Trump has done. Without having American industries already in place that Americans could turn to when he imposed his tariffs, all he did was levy a stealth tax on the American people. Because he's telling countries overseas, listen up, world, I'm going to make your products cost X% more for Americans. Suck it up. And they reply, okay, up your ass with broken glass. We're just going to raise our prices to match, and then some. And now, Americans who have no other way of getting these products that they need are paying more. It's just a tax, people. It's a tax that's going into his and his cronies' pockets. How? Because those tariffs tanked the stock market. We were down $5 trillion, remember? Trump's friends bought up stocks when they were rock bottom. Then he repealed some of his tariffs, the market rebounded, and they all made out like bandits. On my dime, on your dime. Wall Street called it taco trading. Trump always chickens out. In earlier times, the Justice Department would have called it insider trading. But not anymore, not with this insanely corrupt administration. So, because of this stealth tax via tariffs, everything is more expensive for Americans than ever. Everything went up. Life is more and more unaffordable for everyone. Why? Because of Donald Trump. Oh, but we won. This is what winning feels like. But Biden once did something bad. I mean, yeah, okay, Biden was a senile old fart with dementia, and his administration was being run by a shadow government in his name. Why do you think they fought putting Kamala Harris on the ticket until it was no longer possible to do otherwise? Because whoever was running the government for Biden wanted to continue to do so. Okay, color me tinfoil again, but there was no question that he had dementia. And someone had to be calling the shots, right? Yep, the economy sucked under Biden. He made the illegal immigrant crisis much worse than it had been before. There's no question of that. But honestly, I'm not talking about the stock market. I'm talking about for you and me. Is the economy better or worse now under Trump? Everything is even more expensive than it was under Biden. Everything is even more unaffordable, and there's no end in sight. It's like this, folks. Imagine the United States is an apartment building. Now, our last landlord was a senile old coot with dementia. He went around breaking a lot of windows, he peed on some carpets, he wiped his butt on the drapes, drew some graffiti, kicked some walls, whatever. He was horrible, I'm not questioning that. But our current landlord? He's pouring kerosene all over the basement. He's dousing all the walls in gasoline, and he's flicking his lighter trying to get a flame started. No matter what, if someone is doing that, you stop them. You don't just shrug and say, but the last landlord broke some windows. Who the hell cares? Why does that mean you're not supposed to say anything about the psycho trying to burn your home down right before your eyes? I'm getting off track here. Let's get back to me and what pisses me off about how Trump has betrayed the right and the things I was raised to believe in. Number 3, his blatant disrespect and childlike abuse of our military. I am a United States Army veteran. No, I'm not a war veteran, nor am I in any way a decorated one. My father is, actually, on both counts, and I love him. But Trump was a chicken shit, cowardly draft dodger. Because his rich daddy paid a doctor to say that his little piggies were deformed. Now, I don't believe you should have to have been in the military to be president, nor am I saying that not wanting to go to war should necessarily be a disqualifier. But this cowardly piece of parasite-infected pond scum, he's no pacifist. He wants to play dictator like his hero Putin, with fascist military parades on his birthday. Sorry, folks. Yes, the Army had a permit for some sort of public celebration for its 250th birthday this year. But there was never a parade in the works until he became president again. Anyone else remember when Bill Clinton became president and he gave a speech at the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, and more than 100 veterans turned their backs on him because he was a draft dodger? But here is this piece of garbage using Arlington Cemetery as a backdrop for his campaign commercials. Yes, he didn't want to do the right thing. He ran away, and then he uses the people who died in his place, not as an example of why war is a horrible thing that should be avoided, but as a prop. He used their graves as a backdrop. The man is a disgusting piece of filth. He's been reported to refer to those fallen heroes that he uses as props as losers and suckers. When dissing John McCain, he tried to use the fact that he had been a prisoner of war against him, saying that he liked people who weren't captured better than people who were. How incredibly disrespectful to those soldiers who were captured, tortured, and died as prisoners, while he was getting his poor little defective tootsies manicured. He's made cuts to the VA, laying off workers that are only there to help our veterans. Through DOGE, he's eliminated many contracts essential to veteran services. He fired the VA Inspector General, undercutting oversight. He and his underlings claim that this was all done in the name of efficiency. But they've created staffing shortages, terminating contracts that affect cancer care and toxic exposure assessments. Like everything that DOGE touches, it's all the little people who suffer. It's all the little people that this disgusting, vile, feces-licking maggot treats like his playthings, and somehow he gets worshipped for it by those who claim to support the troops. I just don't get it. Again, there's nothing wrong with wanting peace. I can respect a pacifist president who wants to downsize the military and military spending, but that's not what he is doing. He is using our National Guard, our soldiers, as his own playthings to occupy cities and states that disagree with him and his policies. He wants to play military dictator with G.I. Joes that are real people, like the little bratty bully child that he is. I mean, this man is so goddamned weak. I see all this garbage in the right-wing propaganda like Fox, Newsmax, OAN, and on social media about what a great, strong, manly leader he is. There's nothing manly about him. There's nothing strong about him. There is nothing masculine about him. He is a pampered, blubberous, whiny, spiteful little man-baby who always gets his way because his daddy was rich and powerful. He just has reams and reams of blackmail on people just as vile as he, and yes, just like Biden, he is a senile, demented puppet with powerful controllers who have a vested interest in keeping him in place. The 1%, the oligarchy, the Project 2025 people, call them whatever you want, and all their malarkey of using him as a lightning rod, it's working. Again, I don't want to verge into shaming, but it is beyond me how anyone could claim that this... I'm sorry, having the political clout and money to get your way whenever you throw a tantrum doesn't make you strong. It just shows how pathetically weak a human being you are. Whatever happened to Republicans supposedly liking the masculine? What happened to Republicans respecting manhood? I mean, honestly, please, forgive me for using the vernacular, but if Donald Trump really wants to grab some pussy, all he needs to do is wrap his arms around himself. Okay, moving on. Number 4. Number 4 in ways Donald Trump has betrayed the right, Republicans, and our country and everything I was raised to believe in: dictator worship. Now, when I was a kid, I grew up in a right-wing, affluent suburban enclave called Basking Ridge, New Jersey. Wonderful place with wonderful people, don't get me wrong. But back in the 80s, Ronald Reagan was considered God by Republicans everywhere. Then, you grow up and looking back, you see how his deregulations were the foundations of the economic cesspool we live in today, where the super rich like Trump get super richer and everyone else kisses their asses as they make them poorer and poorer, but that's a gripe for another episode. Disastrous economic policies aside, one thing I do have to give it up to Reagan for: he stood up to dictators. He stood up to the USSR. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. He stood up to what he called the evil empire governments. Probably the Berlin Wall would have come down and the coup in the Soviet Union would have happened without him eventually, but he definitely put the pressure on for these things to happen when they did. Now, Trump, on the other hand, it's nauseating the way he licks Putin's poop chute. I mean, here is a man, Putin I'm talking about, who has invaded a sovereign nation, Ukraine, bombed their cities to rubble, kidnapped its children. His armies have raped its girls and women, and Trump just openly kisses his ass. It's one thing if you feel that we should not be spending so much money to help Ukraine, or if you don't want to send in troops, possibly your children over there, or even if you're concerned that it'll end up with the nukes being launched. I mean, anything is possible. I can understand that. But the way Trump bends over for Putin makes me want to blow chunks. What did Trump say about that monster? At least he's a leader. At least he's a leader? What the hell does America even stand for anymore when our president says things like that about a murderer, an invader, and a rapist? Ukraine should never have started it. Started what? Being invaded? Not giving up? Fighting the way Americans used to? And the way Trump treated Zelensky the first time he visited, the blatant contrast between a real leader who has stood by his people, who has led them through 3 years of hell, who has fought off this ongoing invasion against incredible odds, and our repulsive man-baby coward of a president throws a tantrum before the entire world and treats him like garbage. All because Zelensky wouldn't participate in his corrupt scheme to implicate Joe Biden and his son and to take the fall for Russia for their American election interference. Yeah, remember that? The first time Trump was impeached? We've all forgotten. The man worships dictators because he wants to be one. Speaking of dictators, remember during Trump's State of the Union address this year, when he talked about basically annexing Greenland and the Panama Canal? What the hell has our country become when our president talks like Hitler and half of the nation wants to pretend that it's normal.
Oh, he's a kidder. He likes to kid. You just fell for his spin, stupid you. You have Trump derangement syndrome.
I'm sorry, what kind of brain-dead fool not only deliberately follows but worships a leader whom they know is blatantly full of shit? I know all politicians are liars, but if you're swearing your undying allegiance to someone you admit that you know you can't trust, that just tells me you're a complete fool. I'm sorry, I'm trying to stay away from shaming, but I just don't get it. The mental gymnastics people go through, I mean, it's one thing if you personally want to excuse or praise him or you love him, that's your own choice. But when you insult, belittle, and vilify and shout down anyone who dares to question him or simply tells the truth through his never-ending stream of double talk and lies, or those of his mouthpiece Bondi. Trump derangement syndrome. It baffles me. It flabbergasts me. If you're someone who shouts down anyone who criticizes him or points out the truth, do you honestly think he could give two shits about you? Look at his life. Look at the way his entire life he has wiped the greasy diarrhea from between his orange butt cheeks with people like you and me. Why would you insult and shout down people for speaking the truth on his behalf? I just don't get it. Honestly, it's like half the nation saw the abominable way the far-left Hillary supporters acted back in 2016 and said, "Hold my beer." Standing up against dictators is what made Americans heroes in the 20th century. It's what the world looked up to us for. Our fathers, uncles, grandfathers, and great-grandfathers who fought the Nazis, they would be appalled at what Ukraine is going through. They would stand up for them without a moment's hesitation. Why? Because they learned through blood and sacrifice that dictators cannot be appeased. Again, you know what? Again, the fault is mine. I actually believed in America. I'm like Bonacera in The Godfather. I believe in America. No, seriously, I'm at fault. I am at fault. I believed in the America I was raised to believe in. Everyone get a good laugh at me and my TDS, my Trump derangement syndrome, because I thought America was supposed to be better than this. I honestly believed in it. That's why I joined up and served. The America of heroes, standing up for truth, justice, and the American way, just like Superman. Now, we kiss the ass of a dictator and mock his victims. We tell them that it's their fault for defending themselves and not appeasing the monster that they've suffered so much horror and devastation from. All for what? To appease our own worthless, rich, blubberous orange worm of a man-baby? A weak, pathetic, pitiful, spiteful, tantruming toddler who would throw all of us under the bus in a second. He has thrown all of us under the bus. He's doing it right now. What does that say about us as a nation? That this is the clown, this is the fool, this is the jackass that we the people have chosen to lead us without question. Like I said, the problem is mine. I'm the fool. I'm the naive idiot because I believed. I believed in what I was taught growing up. Trump derangement syndrome. I fell for it. Everyone have a good laugh. Is ideology really that important? Is the us versus them of it all really that important? Petty spitefulness? Winning? Is it really worth throwing away your constitutional rights for, your economy for? Is it worth burning the nations to the ground? Okay, so continuing to explain why Trump has betrayed everything I was raised to believe that the right stood for, let's get to the biggest political hypocrisy of them all: Christian values. Those who follow Trump because they say he is restoring us to be a Christian nation. Now hold on there, blasphemer, I hear some of you cry. You're not a Christian. I've seen you make Jesus jokes all the time. You believe that a dish of flying pasta created the world. I mean, yes, it's true that, when asked, I list my religion as Pastafarian, which is the first church of the flying spaghetti monster. May you all be touched by his noodly appendage. Now that, for those who don't know, is a satirical religion. It is a joke. In actuality, I am what I refer to as an agnostic. There are atheists out there who are just as fundamentally religious about it, who would call me a wuss, who won't admit that he's an atheist like them, but that's neither here nor there. But it does show how deep the us versus them ideology can get into every aspect of life, but I digress. Agnostic, as I see it, means that I admit that I have no idea who or what created us, or even if somebody did create us. It does mean I am willing to entertain the possibility. And yes, I am the first person to say, Jesus walks into an inn, puts 3 nails on the front desk, and asks if he can be put up for the night. Pum-pum. I believe there is a difference between religion and who or whatever created us, if they created us. God is God, and religion is a creation of man, but that's neither here nor there. That's something for another episode entirely. So, hearing all that, you might wonder why I feel that the right has betrayed the idea of a Christian nation. But let me ask you this. What does it mean? What does a Christian nation mean? What does it mean to be Christian? Does it mean going through the weekly sit-down, stand-up, kneel of Catholic aerobics, as the late, great Judy Tenuta put it? You know, eating a rice wafer and a sip of wine and believing that some guy who went to school for 12 years actually converted it into the body and blood of Christ? Does it mean giving your money in an envelope to the church once a week? Does it mean that anyone who sees their sexuality or gender different than you is a filthy monster? Does it mean that LGBTQ plus whatever people shouldn't be allowed legal unions and protections? Does it mean insisting that everyone follow your views, your beliefs? Or does it mean simply to follow the teachings of Jesus? Does it mean to feed the hungry, to give water to the thirsty, to give clothes and shelter to the poor? Does it mean to love your neighbor as yourself? I admit 100% I have committed many sins and said and done things I'm not particularly proud of and wish I could take back. I am no better than anyone else. But how can you demand a Christian nation and then tell me in any way, shape, or form with a straight face that Donald Trump, a man who has been accused of rape and sexual assault many times, a man who has spent his whole life making money by making other people poor and then jumping out of the window with a golden parachute, a man whose Doge policies were solely centered on taking away any protection for the poor from the rich, like him, who just want to squeeze and squeeze everyone else into poverty. A convicted felon, a man, once again, who orchestrated a riot because he could not accept that he lost an election. a riot in which he encouraged violence against police officers and the destruction of your national capital, all in his selfish, lying, tantruming, toddler-like, crying man-baby name. Look at his entire life of selfishness, of greed, of lies, of sexual assault, of hypocrisy, and you tell me how in any way, shape, or form he is giving you a nation that follows the teachings of Christ. Look around at all the hate and bile and racism and anger he has promoted. If that's what you call a Christian nation, just because he's buttering your side of the bread and giving the Christian religion hypocritical lip service, then you're welcome to it. I mean, I do understand there are those out there to whom abortion is all that matters, and I do understand and respect the way they feel about it and why they feel the way they do, even if I don't agree with them. But is it worth sacrificing the entire country over? Is it worth losing your constitutional rights over? Is it worth a masked, ununiformed, unshielded, unaccountable Gestapo grabbing American citizens and legal immigrants and pulling them into unmarked vans over? All because their color is different than yours? Is that Christian? Is that America? I mean, it's one thing to leave it up to the states. It's one thing to say that you want abortion illegal, and let's be honest here. These idiots, especially in New York, who passed abortion laws that could be interpreted as allowing abortions up to birth for emotional health reasons, you asked for it. You gave the anti-abortion people the impetus they needed. You helped galvanize them that their worst fears were coming true. I understand it's a back and forth pendulum that keeps swinging wider and wider. I know I'm all over the place here. I'm just trying to keep it real. I'm sorry. But anyway, the anti-abortion laws that the Republicans have put into place have done so much more than that. They've made women with miscarriages and dead fetuses carry them to term. That's real psychological and emotional harm. They've kept women with miscarriages from receiving the life-saving treatment they needed. Since 2019, there's been higher infant and maternal death rates. There's been higher cases of sepsis. Where does it end? Where does pro-life mean that you actually care about the living? We'll get to that in a moment. Whether or not you believe in his divinity, I want you to really try to imagine what America would look like if we were a nation based on the teachings of Jeshua ben Joseph, aka Jesus Christ. If we were actually a Christian nation. Blessed are the meek, blessed are the poor, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for justice. Love thy neighbor as thyself. Turn the other cheek, clothe and feed the poor. The list goes on and on. The point is, if all of you look at Donald Trump's life, his policies, the hatred, bigotry, and intolerance, and further destruction of the poor for the glory of the rich that he's festered, and then say you support him because he's restoring us to a Christian nation? Separation of church and state? To heck with that cocky duty. What did those founding fathers know? Next thing you know, they'll be saying that we're all created equal and that we should be a nation of laws. You know what? Let's go back to ICE for a moment. I understand that America can't logistically have open immigration, and that Biden, or rather his puppet masters, made the illegal immigration issue so much worse. There's nothing racist or evil about realizing that. It's reality. We just can't afford it. But you know something? Obama deported twice as many illegal immigrants than Trump. He did it without a masked Gestapo that could pull people off the street into unmarked vans without any accountability, just based on the color of their skin. He did it without whipping his supporters into a cesspool of fear, anger, and racism the way Donald Trump has. He did it without violating the Fourth Amendment the way Trump has, allowing ICE to search American citizens' home without a warrant. And still, Obama doubled Trump's numbers. Without inciting hatred and racism, without a masked Gestapo, without violating your constitutional rights. So then, if these actions that are destroying America aren't necessary to deport illegal immigrants, then why is Trump doing it? Why is he orchestrating so much hate against your fellow Americans? I mean, it's hysterical. Trump is even a worse Republican than Obama. Okay, so there you have it. I'm sorry if I verged into shaming because I really didn't mean to. Like I said, I know and love lots of people who support Trump. And yes, they are good people. They're not racists. I don't mean any of this ironically. Like I said, this is all about me. This is all about how I feel the Republican Party, through its worship of Trump, has completely turned its back on the conservative values I was raised with, the American values I was raised with. They've turned their backs on America, its police, its servicemen and women, those who have given their lives for this country, and not only literally, our doctors too. And that is so embarrassing. I don't know what else to call it. My God. We used to be so proud of our American progress, remember? We used to be proud of our scientific and medical achievements, our advancements. We were the #1 first world nation. We led the world in scientific and medical research and progress. Now, look at us. RFK Jr., Trump's esteemed Secretary of Health and Human Services, former heroin addict with absolutely zero medical training or expertise, denies the COVID vaccine that saves so many lives, embracing Trump's first-term anti-vaccine rhetoric that caused so many unnecessary deaths from that horrible pandemic. RFK Jr. is just another insane toddler putting his fingers into his ears when logic and scientific evidence are presented, screaming, "La la la, I can't hear you." He's a Trump wannabe. He just lies and lies and lies, and it causes death. He's gutted the CDC and real vaccine research. How can the Republican Party possibly call itself the pro-life party when it promotes junk, pseudoscience over proven medical facts? When they, RFK Jr. and their anointed orange demigod, want to throw us back to the Dark Ages. Bring back leeching, why don't you? All these idiots, they're alive because of vaccines. Their grandparents probably lost brothers and sisters and loved ones to horrible diseases, and they got on their knees and they thanked the God that these assholes claim to worship every single night for every vaccine that was invented to keep them and their families alive and healthy. It's just shameful what we've become. Every Republican, senator, governor, and Congress being needs to admit the truth and change the name of their party to the pro-death party. Because with RFK Jr. and Trump at the helm, that's what they're promoting. It's absolutely terrifying how our heads are so much up the ass of this us versus them nonsense that it's done away with all common sense. So, where does all this leave us? Again, like I said, you do you. I'm not telling anyone to change anything. I'm just saying, again, the ways I feel Trump has betrayed every Republican value I was raised to believe in, how he's betrayed America. So where do we go from here? I honestly don't know, because we're all so ridiculously deep in this us versus them garbage. I don't see any way out. I would love for every single Republican out there to stand up for the ideals, values, and beliefs of the Republican Party. I would love for them to actually demand a truly Christian nation. Just imagine what that would be like. That'll never happen. They'll just sit there and go, but Biden, you didn't care when Biden, but Biden. Again, who the hell cares? Biden isn't president. Biden isn't the one trying to burn your home down. Trump is. Trump is the guy dousing the place with kerosene and trying to light a match. Standing there and saying, but Biden, is that really what you're going to do while Trump burns your house down? While he erodes your constitutional rights? Everything he has done in the name of getting rid of illegal immigrants has all been worded in such a loose way that it can easily apply to you and me. This isn't about illegal immigrants. It's about eroding the Constitution. It's about snipping away at the rights that protect you. It's about poking holes in the walls that our founding fathers put in place to keep the president from becoming a tyrant. Does us versus them really matter so much? Now, no one has to say that they were wrong in voting for him. I'm not saying that anyone was wrong for voting for him. Again, I firmly believe everyone has the right to vote for whomever they want. I don't want anyone to apologize. I don't want anyone to justify. But just because you voted for him doesn't mean that you can't say that he's betrayed you. That he's betrayed the values you stand for, that he's working to cut your constitutional rights and freedoms away. And Democrats, just don't be dicks, all right? You're part of the problem. This whole shaming nonsense is all part of the problem.
Leopards ate my face.
You all act like dicks to Republicans any time they admit that Trump has done anything wrong, and then you wonder why they don't want to admit it anymore. And, switching back and forth, the Republican Party isn't any better, But Biden, who gives a rat's ass?
Oh, so you think the Democrats are going to do any better?
No, I don't. We're in this situation because the Democrats adopted the MO of shrouding themselves in social policies so that if you point out how badly their economic policies were working, they would just scream insults at you and shut you down by calling you hateful. They pushed ideologies that were never allowed to be questioned, and they promoted social equity instead of equality. Now, I'm all for monetary equity, don't get me wrong, but the hypocrisy of pushing social equity over equality is part of what caused so much anger that got us into this mess. I know, I'm suddenly all over the place. I'm sorry. Again, I'm trying to keep it real, but there's so much blame to go around, but there's so much goodness to go around too. Everybody, when it comes down to it, everybody really just wants to live their lives, and they want things to be better for themselves and for their children. The point is, this whole us versus them garbage is just tearing the nation apart. It may be too gone to fix, because that's the way the 1%, the super rich, the Project 2025 people, whatever you want to call them, the Illuminati, that's the way they want it. It's like I said before, the more our pitchforks are turned on each other, the more we dare not take them away from each other, because then the other side is going to win, then the more we won't turn it on the people who are screwing us. Here's my final thought. What do you want America to be? What is your vision of the ideal America you want to see, that you want to live in, and that you want your children to grow up in? I'm not even going to give hypotheticals. I just want everyone to honestly think about it. What is your version of an American utopia? Then honestly ask yourself, without asking if the opposition could do better, your side, their side, whatever, are any of our current leaders ever going to give that dream to you? Is it entrenching ourselves in this us versus them, back and forth escalating garbage ever going to give it to us? Or is it just taking it further and further away? And there's so much paranoia about socialism. Like, if we give people healthcare, education, if we feed our poor, if we follow the teachings of Jesus, then we're socialists. I'm all for pulling ourselves up by the bootstraps. I'm all for that ideal. But here's the thing. If you want people to pull themselves up by the bootstraps, then you have to give people the ability to pull themselves up by the bootstraps. The number of people who have that ability, it keeps shrinking. It keeps getting smaller and smaller. It's not just, the lazy or parasites or whatever you want to call them. It's regular, everyday people who actually want to pull themselves up by the bootstraps, but they can't because the oligarchy, whatever you want to call them, has created a world in which they can't. Just do me a favor and think about it. Thank you for being here all this time. If you made it all the way to the end, this is a long one. You have been listening to the Egotistical Podcast. I have been and continue to be your most egotistical host, Tony LaRocca. For more information, please visit egotisticalproductions.com. I have lasagna.